Hello, my dear patrons, and welcome to the video podcast of May 2019. If you're joining me for the first time, welcome. This is basically a 40-minute Q&A session where I answer a lot of your questions that you posted for me on Patreon, and you also get a chance to look at a slowed-down version of one of my oil painting time lapses. Today's time-lapse features my piece that is inspired by the Goddess of Mercy, and she was a part of my recent mini solo show exhibition with Corey Hufford Gallery in Los Angeles. I am so happy to be done with this show. It was definitely a labor of love. It threw my sleep schedule way off track, and overall was just a very trying period of my life, but I'm very happy with how the pieces turned out, and even happier that I get to share a lot of the behind the scenes progress and make some more tutorials out of the pieces with you guys, my Patreon family. So let me just quickly jump to your questions in the interest of time. Just FYI, if you're listening for the first time, I record this podcast in one take. I want it to feel as candid and as authentic as possible. So it's going to be similar to almost like a live podcast where I'm not going to do much editing unless, I completely say something wrong. But as long as it's easy and not too messy to listen to, I will try my best to answer the questions in real time and be candid and, not make this feel like another polished YouTube video where I'm reading from a script. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoy it, and please pardon me if I tend to ramble on. That is one of my weaknesses. Okay, first question is from Kay Faye, and Kay says, "Congrats on your show. I hope you get some time to catch up on sleep. What do you do after you complete a painting? Are you able to work on the next painting that same day, or do you give yourself time to have a mini celebration and relax? Also, do you plan on getting another P.O. box for fan mail? If not, I understand because it would be another expense. Thank you for your time." Thank you so much for your questions, Kay. So to answer the P.O. box question, I actually do have a new P.O. box since I moved to Seattle. I just haven't publicized yet. I don't know why I haven't made it public. I feel like I just never got around to it, and then it just kind of fell off the radar. So I will leave my P.O. box information in the video description. So if you want to send me mail or letters, I always love receiving packages and mail from you guys. So it doesn't have to be anything fancy, but if you even want to just send me a quick little postcard, it's like a kid on Christmas when I receive mail from you guys. So I'll leave that information in the video description. But for your first few questions, what do I do after I complete a painting? So it really depends on what other work I have to do. You actually bring up a really good point when you ask, do I give myself time to celebrate and relax? Oftentimes I feel like I don't, and that's because I just tend to hop on to the next project or the next thing on my to-do list. For example, while working on this collection for a gallery show, whenever I finished one piece, I would often just immediately jump straight to the next piece because I was working on several paintings at once. And, since my palette was still wet and my brushes were still out and my easel was still set up, I tend to I painted as much as I could and never gave myself time to celebrate finishing a painting. But, what I've been thinking and reflecting a lot, especially after this solo show, because it has taken such a toll on my physical and mental health, just because I think it's my fault. I wasn't the best at budgeting my time. I wasn't the best at managing my stress. I kind of just got caught up in the whirlwind, like chaos of, trying to pump this collection out as fast as possible. But afterwards, when I realized what it had done to my sleep schedule, to my my physique, because I was snacking a lot, staying up late, I wasn't exercising. I realized I really do need to take time to slow down and enjoy other parts of life, and also give myself time to celebrate my accomplishments in my career. I feel like I was raised to always, be humble and to always try to push myself to improve and never be arrogant or never be too full of myself. I think it might just be like a common thing in most Chinese families where the kids are raised with very strict high standards and seldomly get praised. I don't really know what it's like now because I can only speak to my personal experience and the experience of my close friends and my cousins and people that I know who are Asian American immigrants, but it's a very common trait for Asian American millennials such as myself to, be very self-critical and to not take the time to pat ourselves on the back or to even let ourselves mentally celebrate a win. We're just like, after I did something or finished something or did a good job, I would just move on to the next thing. Or if I did something really terrible or I made a mistake or I failed, I would kind of harp on that and, always be reflecting about how I can improve or how I can fix things. But I never take the time and energy to focus on what I did right and what I've been successful at and good at. Part of it, is coming from, I think part of that motivation is good because it does keep me always hungry for more. Like I'm always trying to improve, always trying to learn. And in return, that helps me improve faster. But it takes a toll on you because, if I haven't said anything nice to myself or even thought of anything nice to say to myself in so long, I'm just constantly berating myself and tearing myself down. Over time, it builds up and I end up becoming really sad and, not feeling very confident, not feeling very hopeful or encouraged. So yeah, I think upon answering your question, I currently don't take time off to celebrate. I just jump to the next painting or jump to the next, tasks. But I think moving forward, I will try more to celebrate, not just when a painting is done, but like, let's say a video is done or, maybe cut my work day off. Like if I've worked a full good, 8 hours, I won't push myself more. I'll just force myself to have a normal work schedule so I can take time to, go to the gym or to cook dinner or to see my friends. So yeah, that's kind of my long-winded answer. Next question is from Kim Hawkins, and Kim says, "Hi, Happy. I loved seeing all your pieces for your show. Very beautiful." Well, thank you, Kim. I was wondering, how do you frame your originals once you're done with them? Do you do anything special to them to make sure they're protected/preserved? Thanks in advance. So for my originals, what I like to do is buy a frame ahead of time. Frames, a lot of times if you buy them in stores or maybe secondhand if you find them on Craigslist or, just buy them at a yard sale or an antique store. A lot of frames come pre-made in preset sizes. I think they go from 8x10 to 11x14 to 16x20. There's 18x24, and then they go up as high as 24x36. And there's a few other ones sprinkled in 12x16 or maybe 9x12. So, but regardless, there are a set of standard sizes that'll make it easier for you to find a frame and make it cheaper when it comes to framing your piece. Because if you get your artwork custom framed, they have to basically build the frame for you and build all the little knobs and pieces to kind of tighten or fit your painting inside. So I really recommend buying a pre-sized frame and then buying pre-sized panels. I feel like as long as you follow the standard range of sizes, it's going to be cheaper and easier because those things can be produced in mass so that they don't have to be charged as much. And then so for example, I'll just use example for this show. All of my oil paintings were 11x14 and all my drawings my oil paintings were 11x14, and then my watercolor paintings, they're not drawings, they're paintings, watercolor paintings were 8x10. So I had 11x14 and 8x10 artworks, and then I just bought 11x14 and 8x10 frames. You can get frames that are the overall frame size could vary depending on the style of frame. You could get something really thin and minimal or something really ornate and large. I think my pieces, once I framed them, the whole thing measured maybe 17x22 or something like that. But the opening where the the cutout to place your artwork in, they have standard sizes. So I bought frames that had cutouts that were 11 by 14 or 8 by 10. And then once I bought those frames, I could take them to the framers and just have the framers install, like they fit the artwork into the frame. They install a dust cover, which is basically like a sheet of paper to cover the back so that dust and other things don't get in through the back. And then they screw in a hanging wire. And I love going to frame shops because they normally don't cost that much. Once you buy the frame, the price to install it could be as cheap as like $5 to $8, or if you go to maybe a fancier one, I usually just go to Michael's or your local art store, whatever is like the most popular one near you, and they always charge me like around $10 to $20 for a 8 by 10 or 11 by 14 frame installation. But if you were to just drop off the artwork with no frame and ask them to build you a custom frame and then install the piece into the frame, it sometimes can go upwards of $200. And that's just, that's crazy because, if the gallery takes 50% commission, which they usually do, and you spent like $200 or $300 framing and then adding on the shipping costs, and like in the end, you won't even have much profit if you sell a piece. So I really recommend trying to save money as often as you can. So I don't really do anything special to the artwork itself besides varnishing them. I used 1 to 2 coats of Gamblin's Gamvar, and I like to use the glossy one. They also have a satin version if you don't want your piece to be too shiny, and varnishing just protects the painting from like dust and particles, and I think it protects it from UV light sometimes. But overall, oil paintings are pretty sturdy. Oil paintings also don't usually get exhibited with glass, so I don't use glass when I frame oil paintings. But my watercolor paintings, I use glass, and any drawings, basically any other medium, I would use glass. I think oil painting and acrylic paints, I don't know why, it's just not very common to see them framed with glass, at least in terms of all the art shows and museums I've been to. They just simply have a nice frame and a hanging wire, a dust cover, and a coat of varnish or some sort of protective layer. Okay, next question is from Tina Fig, and Tina says, "Hi Happy, your show was absolutely stunning and all your hard work really paid off." Oh, thank you, Tina. You guys are so sweet. Follow up on Kim's question, how do you choose your frames and where do you find such gorgeous ornate frames? Thank you. That's a question I get a lot, but I don't mind answering because I think it's a very useful thing for artists to know. So earlier I told you about ways you can save money on framing and also buying panels if you just buy preset sizes. So where do you find such frames? There are so many different places depending on where you live. I'm just going to go through what I have access to locally in the West Coast in the United States, but there are a lot of stores like Michael's, Joann's, Aaron's Brothers, even IKEA has some really good frames if you're into more modern, kind of a more modern aesthetic. The ornate frames are a bit tougher because they're not as common in like home or furniture stores because nowadays people love modern frames, but you can still find a lot of ornate frame options at your local art stores like Michael's or Joann's. I also love to go to those kind of, I don't even know what types of stores they're called, but maybe consignment stores or secondhand. They're not secondhand stores. They're stores that sell discounted fashion and beauty products and luggage and furniture at like a lower price because they were last season's style. So they're still brand new, never before used, but they're just a little bit out of style. And they sell them usually for a huge discount from what normal retail would cost. So there's stores like that in the United States: Ross, TJ Maxx, Marshalls. I'm sure in other countries they might have a similar type of store. Those places you'll have to do some digging because a lot of the frames are smaller tabletop frames, which is fine because, for small pieces they work great. But I haven't really found much luck with larger than 8 by 10 frames at those types of stores. But for 8 by 10 and under pieces, you can usually find a lot of different styles and varieties. A lot of them can be ornate, a lot of them can be rustic, girly. I think for me, it's really fun to go to those stores because it's always a surprise. I never know what I'm going to find. And then lastly, you can look online. Online, there's Amazon, which I think I've searched for ornate frame before or Victorian frame on Amazon. There's always a few results. In terms of prices, I'm not sure, depending on where you live and what the shipping cost is, but they're not too expensive. Again, like it's still cheaper than getting things custom framed, but usually ornate frames tend to cost more than simple frames because they're heavier, they have more material, they have detailed designs that probably cost more money to etch onto the frame. But Amazon, I've also used Craig's frames, like Craigs frames. And there's also a website called pictureframes.com, and they have every single frame you can imagine. And I think the good thing about pictureframes.com is you can custom order like for a custom size, and they'll make it and ship it to you. But in those cases, you have to be willing to wait. So I've said this before, and I'll always reiterate this because I firmly believe in this, but I treat frame shopping as like a constant thing. If I see a good frame, whether or not I have a piece for it, I will buy that frame. Like if I have, enough savings to use. I'm always in a state of looking for frames and collecting frames, because then when it comes time to actually frame my artwork, I'm not forced to find a last minute frame. Without the time pressure, you can choose from a collection of your favorite frames that you already have stored in your house. But if I've encountered instances where I have to get things framed last minute and I didn't have enough frames. This show being actually a great example, because I wanted all the pieces to have the same frame, but I only had, I think, 2 of them in my house, and I needed 3 more. So I was scrambling, running around town trying to find frames that matched. But if you have enough frames on hand, you can take your time. You can even think about what frame you want to use while you're creating the artwork, and then maybe tweak the artwork to fit the frame a little bit. Like if your frame has like a silver color, you can add little bits of silver to your artwork to match it, or things like that. But yeah, I would really recommend going to your local art store, local what's it called, like cheap or discounted fashion store, online, various websites, and also if you have time, I love going to antique sales or like antique fairs. A lot of big cities have monthly antique fairs where people set up booths and sell antiques. You can find some really authentic, older, ornate frames there. There's also yard sales, estate sales, garage sales that you can find on Craigslist. And those are great because you're recycling. You're not buying something new. You're adopting someone else's old, unwanted frame and giving it a new purpose and a new life. So yeah, it's not the easiest thing to find frames. It's not like, buying toilet paper or pencils where you can usually just order it online, or most stores will have the style you want available. It does take a lot of time and prep work, and especially if you're picky about the style. So I'd always recommend you to just be on the lookout. And if you're shopping on a weekend for fun, just, visit a frame store, visit a secondhand or like antique store, and just check out what frames they have and pick one up, even if you don't have an artwork waiting for it. Okay, the next question is from Renee H, who says, "Hi, I'm so glad to finally be able to support you here on Patreon. What is your current filming setup for YouTube, and how has it changed, if at all, from when you started?" Well, first of all, thank you so much for your support on Patreon, Renee. I'm so glad to have you. And my current filming setup for YouTube actually hasn't changed that much from when I started. I think all you need is something to record. So either a nice DSLR camera, or nowadays iPhones, the quality is so good, and they have like a time-lapse or hyperlapse option to record. So something to record. I would recommend something that records in at least 1080p so that your video comes out high quality, because I think it's really discouraging for viewers if your video is low quality. So in order to make sure you attract viewers and just preserve a high quality reputation for your channel, I'd recommend something that records in at least 1080p, and a tripod. I currently have 2 tripods. One that's a small tabletop one that I can travel with, and I can the legs are bendable, so I can wrap it around like railing, or I can wrap it around like a table. So it's quite good for if you need to get it into a weird little corner. So it's great for vlogs or different fun angles. But the tripod I usually use for like the time lapse that you're seeing now for my paintings is just this Amazon Basics tripod I got online years ago. I think it was like $20, around that price. It wasn't that expensive. It gets the job done. And I just put my Canon, I have a Canon DSLR, I think it's a Rebel T5i. I put it on the tripod, and then I shine a light source pointing at the artwork from the same angle as the camera. This helps reduce glare. Like, this is something I learned over the years. It's a little trick. But if you have the camera and the light source pointing the same direction towards the artwork, you'll reduce glare. And since I'm right-handed, I like to point the camera from the left side so that my hand doesn't cover up parts of the artwork while I'm working. Sometimes, as you'll see in this video right now, I might occlude the camera a little bit with my shoulder if I'm working on something detailed, but usually if it's sped up, people won't notice. And then lastly, you will need before I move on, for the light source, actually my fiance was kind enough, I think for Christmas one year, he bought me a set of really nice like photography studio lights. So they have a really bright white light bulb, and they have they come with these big umbrellas that diffuse the light. I actually don't even need to diffuse the light when I'm painting time lapses. Like the diffusing quality is great for when you're filming your face, talking to camera, because it makes your face soft. You know, it doesn't create like harsh shadows, or doesn't it doesn't make your oily parts of your face like too exaggerated. But for oil paintings and artwork, I actually just use a regular lamp, like floor lamp I got from IKEA, and I put in the photography light bulb. If you don't have a photography light bulb or think it's too expensive, you can always find like a bright white light bulb at Target, Walmart, Lowe's, Home Depot. Just get like the brightest, whitest light bulb you can, because especially at night, it's really easy for your footage to come out looking really yellow if you have like a soft, regular indoor light bulb. So I really recommend the brightest, coolest, whitest light bulb. And then of course, for me, I have 2 memory cards and 2 batteries. That way, while one, battery and memory card are being used while recording, the other ones can charge or be emptied, so that I always have something to switch off. But mostly, I just set the camera. I set the tripod and the camera at an angle. I don't point it directly from behind my head, obviously, because then I'll be blocking everything. But I point it towards my piece. I point the light source towards my piece, and I always put the camera and light source on the left side because I'm right-handed. So that's my current setup. All right, this next question is from Sarah F.E., who says, "Hi, Happy, hope you're well. How much time do you spend on developing your knowledge and skills, like Skillshare, watching other tutorials, reading books, studying old art at museums, etc., each week or each month? Or do you feel like you're at a state where you're satisfied with the progress you're making simply with focusing on your own work? Best wishes from Sweden." Okay, this is an interesting question because I feel like I don't really actively develop my knowledge and skills anymore. I mean, and it's not because I feel comfortable with the progress I'm making. I feel like I'm always very, like I mentioned before, I'm very self-critical, and I tend to only see the mistakes and the ways that I can improve, especially with my art. So I still am very passionate about learning, and I would love to have the time, or maybe I should just get better at managing my time so I can make time to, follow tutorials, do studies, go to art museums, and just sit and sketch. But lately, I feel like the majority of time I have to do art, I spend it completing art for my business, whether it's a commission or a gallery show or, a piece for a video. So I can't remember the last time I just sat and drew for the purpose of practicing, or last time I sat down and painted or drew for the purpose of practicing and improving my skills. It's always been to, for some other purpose. But that being said, I think you can definitely still improve and learn without making artwork specifically for learning purposes. This gallery show was a great example. I wanted to do something more illustrative and, something different from my usual style. At least it's a little bit different. So instead of, I didn't have time to just take a class on how to, do more illustrative paintings. I instead just used the time to build the show and to make concepts for the show. That was my learning time. That was the time that I researched and taught myself. Even though it was for a purpose, it still was an educational process. So I would say that any time that I am painting and drawing, I am practicing and developing better skills. And anytime that I want to branch out and do something different, which, it's hard to like encapsulate that in a numerical value, because I don't know, I feel like art is so organic, and it's hard for me to say like, okay, like 50% of my paintings are new and experimental, and then 50% are my old style. So it's hard for me to like pinpoint and measure which paintings or what percentage of my artwork were for developing new skills, and which pieces were just for like painting for a gallery or for a client. I think overall, no matter what you practice and what intent you have behind practicing, as long as you're practicing, you'll get better. And sometimes when you develop new skills, it's not even done on purpose. I didn't think that I would have to learn, certain ways of drawing line. I mean, I knew I was in for more like thin line work with this collection because it's more illustrative, but I didn't know I would have to learn like new ways to mix colors, or new ways to hold my brush, or new angles. Like, I'm so used to painting with my pieces on a vertical easel, so all the pieces are vertical. I had to lay some of the pieces down and paint like I'm drawing on a desk to achieve certain lines and effects. And, those were not things that I had intentionally planned to do or planned to learn. They were kind of obstacles that I encountered during the painting process, and then kind of figured out through trial and error. I figured out a method that works best for me, that prevents me from making the same mistake, or prevents me from facing the same difficulties as I did before. And through that process over time, like, that's how you practice and improve. So it's hard to say like I guess what I'm trying to say, I guess what I'm trying to say is, I don't feel like I'm at a state where I'm satisfied with the progress that I'm making simply from, doing the work. But I also feel like doing the work does help me practice enough to get to a level that I eventually want to be at. That being said, I do want to make time to study and do more practice work just for the sake of practicing, because I think you can maybe accelerate your progress when you practice with intention. For example, like if I only had a week to make paintings and I spent that entire week just painting hands or just drawing hands, I would be a lot better at the end of the week at drawing hands than if I spent that whole week making, like, let's say 3 different artworks that had faces, hands, backgrounds, bodies, hair. Because, if my time is concentrated on improving how I draw and paint hands, I can definitely improve faster. But it's just hard. Like I said before, I need to get better at time management and budgeting my schedule to make time to really hone in on the areas that I want to improve at. So thank you for, this is a really interesting question. I'm glad you asked this. Okay, next we have a question from Jessica Chang, who says, "Hey Happy, I wanted to know, how long did it take you to grow your YouTube channel from the start? How many views did you get with each video, and how fast did the thousands pile up? I ask because I'd like to start a channel of my own and follow in your footsteps. Also, did you pay for any marketing? Thank you, Happy. Can't wait to join the live stream on Wednesday. Cheers." So first of all, I'm really sorry if I don't remember exactly. I'm gonna try my best to answer this question, but I actually don't really remember how many views each video got in the beginning. I do remember it being very, very little. I think I recall being excited if one video would cross 1,000 views. I thought that was a huge win. I also had a different circumstance because again, I don't remember the exact numbers, and I really wish I had recorded this. Okay, if I were to do this again, I would definitely record everything, but I had a good amount of followers on Instagram. I don't know if it was more than like 10,000, but it was in the thousands when I started YouTube. So there was at least a little boost because I had a few hundred people right off the bat who heard about my YouTube channel from me advertising it on Instagram. That being said, I don't know if that really helps with making a viral video or making views pile up. Honestly, with the YouTube algorithm, it's a mystery. I don't know if I'm the best at guessing how the algorithm works. I know it's a combination of luck and the time you post and your thumbnail and the keywords you use and the tags you use and things like that. But I think it was over time I think maybe after a year I started my channel was when I got my first video to get many views, in terms of like, I think tens of thousands. And that was a huge deal because it really drew more visitors and subscribers to my channel. And I think, momentum is a huge factor in any social media. And if, your fresh content is catching a lot of new eyes and capturing a new audience, and it's like slightly viral. I hate to use the word viral because viral to me is like something huge, like, oh my God, millions of people saw it. But I don't think you need millions of viewers. Like, I don't think any of my videos have surpassed 1 million. The most I have maybe is like 800,000, and that was a video from from at least 3 years ago. But I think as long as you consistently upload good content, high quality content, as long as a few videos do well, they don't have to do extraordinarily well, you can see consistent growth. I feel like I haven't paid for marketing, but I feel like that is something to try. But since I haven't done it, I really don't know what that would be like. And I'm not sure if YouTube allows you to pay for marketing, but I know on Instagram you can pay to promote posts. Oh, actually, I have tried it a few times and it didn't do much. So I don't know if paying for marketing helps, but definitely researching like the right times to post, the right types of videos that are trending and would capture people's eyes. Like if you paint a popular TV character from a show that's really hot right now, that might capture more views. There's certain services like vidIQ is one of them. They'll tell you like which search terms are most popular, or how many people search for it every month. So you can match up your title or your tags or your video description with terms that are popularly searched. So there's a lot of different things you can do to help your YouTube channel's health, but there's really no like guaranteed set formula or set of steps that'll guarantee success or a certain amount of numbers. I think it's a lot of just perseverance and luck. So don't get discouraged. It does take a while to build channels. For some people, they grow really fast. Some people get lucky and their second video is a hit and they get like, hundreds of thousands of subscribers right away. And for some people, it takes time. So as long as you focus on producing good content and, cherishing and engaging with the audience that you currently have, no matter how big or small, I feel like over time, you'll definitely see growth. So I wish you the best of luck. Next, we have a question from Keshna who says, have you ever made a zine? If so, what recommendations do you have for DIYers, or what was your experience? Would you say you've built a brand? If so, should other illustrators do this? Okay, so first of all, if I'm pronouncing zine wrong, I'm really sorry. It's either zine or zine. Like, I know it comes from the word magazine, so I pronounce it zine, but I actually I've never made a zine. I'm not familiar with them because obviously you can tell I can't even pronounce it correctly, but I do not have any recommendations. I'm so sorry because I've never done it. That being said, it is something I've heard about and seen glimpses of, and I would love to look into it more and share what I know when I get a chance to research that. I have thought about publishing an art book, but I know that's very different from like a zine because zines are cheaper and smaller and more easier to make. So I've never made one and I'm so sorry. But would I say I've built a brand? I would say I don't think I consciously tried to build a brand, especially in terms of like, let's say my business cards, my website, my signature. I don't have like a branded package yet, and it's something I would love to do. In fact, I bug my one of my best friends. She's a really awesome designer. I always bug her to give me tips on like how I can make my whole presence online and in person, like make everything feel more cohesive and feel branded, so that even if someone sees like my website or like the font I'm using on a advertisement flyer, like they'll know it's from me. So she's been giving me some good tips on like just using a consistent color palette, a consistent set of fonts. But in terms of like building a brand in terms of my art style, I feel like I have over the years, although that's always changing. And it's not something I did on purpose, but rather, through making pieces and gravitating towards certain themes or color palettes that made me happy or made me more inspired, and then honing in more and more and only focusing on specific styles, color palettes, and subject matters that I liked, I was able to create a more cohesive body of work. When you can see recurring themes and recurring styles it's when you recognize something as a brand. It's like, I think repetition is very important. So I would say my advice would be, if you're trying to brand yourself, always try to stick with something consistent. That's not to say that you can't branch out and try new things. Of course, like I always encourage that, but try to keep with a consistent set of fonts, for example, like your business card, your website, and maybe if you have like little graphics for advertising for things, keep the same size sets of font styles, same sets of colors. Also for your artwork, try to work with a few smaller groups of color palettes or subject matters or aesthetics that really speak to you and really tell your story, and then people will start recognizing your brand. But yeah, I'm not like the most proficient at branding. I think that's like a skill in of itself, and I would love to get better at it. But yeah, I would recommend just sticking with things that you love. Be your true self, and eventually you'll find that repetition naturally, because you'll naturally gravitate towards colors and styles and themes and fonts and things like that speak to you as an artist. Okay, last question is from Jessica Browning, and she says, I recently scored big on 2 beautiful antique frames for $1 each at a flea market, and I couldn't pass them up. One of them, however, looks like the paint has worn off a bit in some places, and it is a cream color. I was wondering if you knew of how to touch it up and keep the gold color without having to paint the entire frame, or would painting the entire frame gold work? They look really similar to the ones you used for the pieces for your solo show. Thank you, and can't wait for the live stream, although I will be catching it afterwards. Okay, so I have a few different tips and ideas of what you could do. First of all, awesome to hear that they're ornate and similar to the ones I have for my show. Those frames are my favorite, as you guys can tell, because I use them so much. If you have a cream colored frame, and it really depends on how like distressed it looks, the gold frames I get look a little bit worn down. So I think the frame manufacturer spray painted it all gold and then used some sort of method to make it look a little bit aged and dirtier. So it's not pure gold. It's not like clean. There's chunks of it that look muddy and like brown. So if your cream frame is distressed and aged like that, I would say it's totally fine to patch it up and paint just the area that you need. But if it's like a really solid, smooth color, I would recommend repainting the whole frame in the new color, because it's really hard to color match. Like even if you try to mix a color to match the frame's original color, it's really hard to get the shade and stuff exactly right. So I'd recommend just spray painting the entire thing the new color. And if you don't like how it looks, there are things you can do to age it and distress it. One example for me is like I have these ornate frames that are like kind of brown, and I don't like it, so I'll spray paint them black, but the black to me looks almost too clean and too simple. So I'll take like a dry brush and I'll rub some iridescent blue paint on it to fit my paintings that are more cool and blue, and I'll just kind of like really messily and organically brush over certain parts of the frame. And especially if it's ornate, the ridges will catch the paint really beautifully, and it gives it that distressed look. And then it's also easier to patch up. If I need to like add some more blue here, some more black there, it won't pop out as much, because once everything is aged, it's really easy to hide any blemishes or flaws. So I would really recommend, if you're okay with changing the whole frame's color, to just spray paint the entire frame your new color. And then if you like a more distressed look, you can find like a dry brush and a distressing color to hand paint it. I think hand painting frames is really fun, and you'll notice if you actually start to do it, you'll find your own preferences on what you like and what works for your specific frame. So these tips are just kind of like a starting point. I think once you get started with the hand painting process, you'll see that it's actually really fun. It's like a nice stage of the entire art making process. Oh, and I forgot to add, sorry. If your frame is already distressed and kind of worn down and old looking, and there's only one small part that's chipped and needs to be patched up, you could try first to patch it up without needing to repaint the whole frame, and it'll be up to your personal judgment on whether that blends in nicely or whether that sticks out too much as like obviously repainted. So it really is up to your own discretion. But if your frame is already distressed, usually it'll hide the patch ups pretty well. So yeah, good luck trying this out. And I think I'm going to wrap up this podcast now. Thank you all so much for being patrons and for being so supportive and sweet and patient with me. I had a great time sharing all of my updates and progress with you guys this month. I also had an awesome time with the live stream. It was so fun drawing your requests. And I hope you guys have a fun and safe summer. And hopefully I can catch you guys in June for some more new artworks and rewards. Bye. Love you guys so much.